these draconian cuts for an agency that you said you wanted to restore to be the leader in infectious disease, yet you're cutting the coverage of infectious disease. Personally, sir, even as you seem distracted while I talk to you about deadly diseases, I think you're dangerous to the American public, and you ought to be fired. And if you're not fired, you ought to have the decency to resign. You're way in over your head. Thanks.
Senator Raphael Warnock just told the Secretary of Health and Human Services to his face that he should be fired. Not in a press release, not on social media. In an active Senate hearing, on the record, while Kennedy sat there appearing to not even be paying attention. What led to that moment is the part that nobody is talking about enough. Warnock spent 6 minutes building a case so precise and so damning that the conclusion was almost inevitable. You need to see the whole thing.
Before he leaves, let me agree with Senator Sanders and ask unanimous consent that an article in the New York Times which shows that there's a higher price for Wegovy on Trump RX. This is the fact in terms of America, and Senator Sanders has been correct.
Without objection. Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Brother Chair. Secretary Kennedy, you're here today to defend the president's budget request. In September, you said that the CDC, quote, will again become the world authority on infectious disease policy. Do you still stand by that statement, yes or no?
We already are.
Secretary Kennedy, do you know what rabies is?
Rabies?
Yeah, do you know what it
is?
Okay, so yeah. Rabies, people contract rabies, as we know, through bites from infected animals like skunks, foxes, like raccoons.
Yeah.
And it can devastate a family. When a pet is infected, it is very serious. It's 100% fatal in humans.
Yes.
If left untreated, and generally it's a horrific experience. Staff at the CDC Rabies Division in Atlanta, Georgia, have historically been able to field emergency calls 24/7 from providers about complex rabies cases using CDC expertise to determine appropriate care. Secretary Kennedy, since you and President Trump took office, do you know how many people are left to staff this 24/7 line?
I do not know, Senator.
Okay, so the answer is one. So I want you to know that there's one person left to staff a 24/7 line to respond to rabies, a disease which left untreated.
You know how many rabies cases there are every year in the United States?
So I'm asking the questions. The CDC's infectious disease work has been so decimated under your leadership that there's only one person left to staff the line and respond to families about this very deadly and terrifying infectious disease. Let me ask about another disease. Secretary Kennedy, do you know what prion diseases are?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thanks. And when you think of prion diseases, one of them would be mad cow disease.
Mad cow disease.
And diseases like mad cow disease can be transmitted from animal meat to humans, and it can cause a rapid onset of dementia, challenges with walking, personality changes, and severe insomnia. It's also 100% fatal, and there is no cure, with people's brain tissue essentially turning into a sponge before death. Do you know which office at CDC monitors prion disease? So,
I do not know, sir.
It's the Prion and Public Health Office. Do you know what population is most at risk of contracting the disease?
I would say it's people who eat meat from CAFOs.
Yeah, so hunters. Prion and Public Health Office is critical in a state like Georgia. In Georgia, we have a lot of hunters. There are more than 600,000 hunters in my state, but your budget proposes to eliminate this office. Respectfully, you seem distracted, Brother Secretary. Why does your budget proposed to eliminate the CDC office that focuses on monitoring this deadly infectious disease that's especially a risk to rural communities. Why are you proposing to eliminate the office?
There's a lot of cuts at the agency that nobody wants. We have a $39 trillion debt. We've been asked to cut across the agency 12%.
I assure you that the 600,000 hunters in Georgia would want this office. They would want the protection. I assure you that families that are dealing with rabies or the prospects of that would want to know that somebody's going to answer the phone when they call. You've come to Congress and justified destroying the CDC by saying you want to just restore the CDC's mission to focusing on infectious diseases. Yet you're also gutting the very offices that keep American families safe from disturbing and deadly infectious diseases.
Senator,
sir, hold on, sir.
Senator, there's 1 to 3 rabies cases a year in the United States. I think one person manning that office full-time probably can handle that traffic. In terms of prion disease, it's very, very rare.
I beg to differ. Here is the issue, and we see this across the board with CDC. The incredible folks at the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, they protect us every day from the threats that we don't see. And they don't get much credit for it because of the stuff that does not happen. And it's okay for the general public not to wake up thinking about that. But we expect you to keep Americans alive. And the cutting that we're seeing, these draconian cuts for an agency that you said you wanted to restore to be the leader in infectious disease, yet you're cutting the coverage of infectious disease. Personally, sir, even as you seem distracted while I talk to you about deadly diseases, I think you're dangerous to the American public, and you ought to be fired. And if you're not fired, you ought to have the decency to resign. You're way in over your head. Thank you.
What you just watched was not a flare-up. It was a verdict. Senator Raphael Warnock walked into that hearing on April 22, 2026, and he did not come with talking points. He came with a structure. He started with rabies, not because it is the most politically charged topic he could have chosen, but because it is the most concrete. Rabies is 100% fatal in humans if left untreated. The CDC division in Atlanta has historically staffed a 24/7 emergency line so that doctors and families dealing with a potential exposure can call in and get guidance from experts in real time. That line, under Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s leadership of the Department of Health and Human Services, is now staffed by one person. 1. Warnock asked Kennedy directly how many people were left to staff that line. Kennedy said he did not know. Warnock told him the answer. Then Warnock moved to prion diseases. Mad cow disease, a condition that causes rapid onset dementia, loss of motor function, personality changes, severe insomnia, and is also 100% fatal with no cure. The CDC's Prion and Public Health Office is the agency responsible for monitoring this disease in the United States. Georgia alone has more than 600,000 hunters, a population that carries elevated exposure risk. Kennedy's budget proposes to eliminate that office entirely. When Warnock asked Kennedy which office at CDC monitors prion disease, Kennedy said he did not know. When Warnock asked who is most at risk, Kennedy guessed people who eat meat from cows. The answer is hunters. Kennedy did not know that either. Kennedy's defense, when it came, was the one that should alarm every person watching. He said there are only 1 to 3 rabies cases a year in the United States, and that one person on a full-time hotline can probably handle that traffic. That answer tells you everything about how this administration understands public health infrastructure. The CDC's Rabies Division is not there to handle the cases that happen. It is there to prevent the cases that could happen. It fields calls from emergency rooms. It guides treatment decisions in real time. It is the reason the number stays at 1 to 3. Kennedy dismantled the thing that produces the low number and then cited the low number as proof the thing was unnecessary. That is not a policy position. That is a fundamental failure to understand the job. And through all of this, according to Warnock, Kennedy appeared distracted, not engaged, not taking notes, not leaning in, sitting there while a United States senator walked him through the real-world consequences of his own budget decisions, affecting his own agency, costing American lives. That is the context for the closing line. Warnock did not lose his temper. He did not raise his voice beyond what the moment required. He delivered a conclusion that the preceding 6 minutes had already proven. You are dangerous to the American public. You ought to be fired. And if you are not fired, you ought to have the decency to resign. You are way in over your head. The stakes here extend well beyond this one hearing. Kennedy has now completed 7 congressional appearances in 8 days. Across every one of them, Democratic senators have documented a consistent pattern. An agency chief who does not know the operational details of the agency he runs. A budget that guts the very infrastructure he promised to restore. And a posture in that hearing room that signals he either cannot or will not engage seriously with the consequences of his decisions. The Senate Help Committee, which Warnock sits on, still has oversight authority over HHS nominations and spending. How that committee moves in the coming weeks will shape whether any of these cuts can be slowed, reversed, or at minimum forced into the public record before they take effect. If you believe that the person running the nation's public health system should be able to answer basic questions about that system, you already know what to do. Share this. The people who need to see it probably will not go looking for it themselves.